Hello, designers. If you're like me, it's been a little while, so welcome back. If you're new around here, just welcome. Interesting thing happened this morning. I was in the discussion boards in my emerging and experimental design trends class, and I realized that a good good few of the things that we were all discussing and bringing up were techniques that were on my list for my regular job today. So what we're going to go over today is package design related. We're going to be in three Adobe apps: Illustrator, Dimension, and Photoshop. And what we're going to go over, and I felt this was worthwhile to actually record a demo. Recently, Illustrator now has a 3D engine built into it, and that's within the last, I believe, 6 months. It's still fairly new. But what I kind of figured out doing a lot of package design again for my regular gig was a workflow for custom models, simple boxes, either with cutouts or today I'm going to show you something that's actually a sleeve that goes around another box that actually holds the product. But you can create the custom model in Illustrator, put it into Dimension, get a UV map for the graphics that gives you some awesome, amazing precision. Set that up in Photoshop and then finish composing, render, do a little post in Photoshop again if you would need. So what I would like to do is go over that workflow. Um, Let me give you just a bit of the setup. So again, I'm actually working on a sleeve that goes around another smaller box. These numbers are in metric. It's an Italian company, an Italian thread maker, actually. The box that I'm working on right here for the 7 small spools is roughly in US measurements. Let's say about 6.5 by 2 3/4 by 1 1/4 on the side. So it's not huge. And what you'll see in the graphics, so I take those original die lines, I break them down into something that's just a little more usable for me as panels. Um, One of the things that I do extremely early, once I finalize graphics and I'm ready to be making mockups, I'm actually at the two concept stage here, and my creative director, admittedly, uh, will tell you that she is a bit spatially challenged. So she really loves it when I do the three-dimensional mock-ups on these to get a feel for the graphics. I also have been, so these are what we're working on here, our actual first step, and these are the clipped flats that I just PNG'd out as because I didn't crop them. And the reason I didn't is you don't have to. If you do an export as and hit use artboards, it'll crop to the artboards for you. So save myself a step. This is actually where we're going to be in a second. The other thing that I've been doing, freeform rotate, so little sleeve here. Um, and one of the reasons I like to do these mockups, even at the concept stage, I also do them at final. One of the reasons I like to do that is I've also been changing how the consumer interacts with the package. Traditionally, the move has been that there's front, and then we have top, and then we have back, and everything is very straightforward. Um, I've been doing things where I'm changing the orientation to more vertical. What I'm going to show you today, where I'm at on this one, is actually a mixed presentation, but the way the graphics are laid out, it's more vertical, and I believe it actually makes sense. So, getting to um, getting to this here, and I don't actually need that. The cancel. So just in case, 3D and materials is what I'm after. I have this open up here. This is super intuitive. It works. It's an extension of the old school extrude and bevel that was under the still is actually under the effects menu. This stuff is really fun to play around with more illustrative graphics. You can do some really cool stuff with typography doing this. So the box that I have actually is 154 millimeters by 66 for a panel. And then the height of the box is 25 millimeters. So if I take this and do extrude, that actually is my um, my box, right? To rotate that around. There are different views in here, way down here, that you can utilize. Since I'm really just creating this not to do anything more with than export, I'm really not so worried about what is going on with the view. I'm not going to mess with any materials. There are materials in here, and there is some different lighting that you can play around with. Um, but here's the thing. So this right now is solid. And as I mentioned, I'm actually not bevel cap, was what I was looking for right here. What I'm actually looking for is a sleeve, except this one sleeves the wrong way. So for me, in this case, making a sleeve, what I have to do is what we would normally consider the top or bottom, actually where the tuck tab is on the inner box on this one. That's actually the dimension, or dimensions that I need to use to create my rectangle, extrude that, and then I give it the depth of the entire package, which is 154 but millimeters. So that when I take the caps off, or you can actually just swap your stroke and fill. Um, that actually gives me get a hold of the free, that gives me the hollow sleeve the way that I need it in here. All right, now to get this out of here, I use the asset export panel, and this is so easy. You can see the one I did earlier. Like I was saying, I realized I had to, not only was this on my list, I had to do it twice. So I had the opportunity to go through once and practice, and then now come in here and go ahead and record it. So from here, I'm going to make sure I'm on not web stuff, OBJ, and then I'm going to hit export. That's going to bring up this dialog. I already have this model, so I'm not going to go ahead and save it. But that is exactly how straightforward that is. And the flats, won't have to go over that again. So now we go into dimension. So we need to get the model into dimension, get the UV map off of it, then head into Photoshop to work on graphics. Then we do placement, and then set our environment, render, and do any post work that we need to. Um, this is the file that I set up previous. Ignore this. I have a solid cube in here, the right size, so that I'm not seeing the graphics through and it's not hollow. To get my OBJ in here, I do File Import 3D Model, and I am working on. Should have left my folders the way they were. 7 sleeve. I need this OBJ, and there we go. Snap that to the ground plane. You can see it's still hollow. Step 1 of already like 5, right? But this goes fairly fast and it's fairly straightforward. So I have my sleeve selected. I'm going to export UVs. And the one thing I want to show you in here, again, I'm not actually going to do this because I already have it and I want to make sure I'm working in the same file. Always use the highest resolution available. All right, and I'm going to cancel out of this. And another thing, when I'm working in Dimension, I'm always thinking in my head, the difficult use case scenario is that at some point I'm probably going to want these for print, if nothing else, for my own books that I put together. So portfolio. Um, I like to work on a canvas that's widescreen, 16 by 9 for a ratio. I always work at double screen resolution. So 144, I have my scene set to centimeters because that's loosely what I'm working in metric. All right, so after your UV map exports, what that is going to open up in Photoshop, it's going to give you, Dimension will give you a PSD for that. It'll be something loosely based on whatever the model name is in Photoshop. When you open that up, this is what you are going to see. And if you take a peek over here in the layers panel, you can see in the UV guides, there's a kind of smattering of good stuff in here. What's useful is the non-editable areas. So here I can clearly see my 4 sides. When you deal with boxes, they aren't going to be welded closed in the UV map, unlike more organic or round structures are a lot easier to deal with. That just adds a step. It's really not difficult. What we need to do first, since we are dealing with something rigid, geometric, in a box, and this UV map came in, honestly, I was very happy to see this simple and put together. It came in really well. So the first move I want to do, this is a map so that we can place this map, and I'm going to go ahead and save it with this different view. We're going to hop back into Dimension. The first thing you really want to do is go ahead and throw the UV map on, and sorry, hold please 1 second. And that went awkward. Apologize for that. I've been in a couple different, right here. Sorry. Go ahead and throw the UV map in there. It's going to come up by default as a decal, and we want to change that placement to a fill. And now we get to look at how the graphics fall in here. And it's very straightforward. If I consider where the A's starts to be the front, then I have the top of my sleeve, I have the back, and then I have the bottom. And that's very straightforward, and also the way it works across here. So I pretty much can keep track of that and turn that off. I'm going to leave on the non-editable area here. One thing that I like to do is get some guides in here. And I mean, very, very much precision overlay. You can see these guides are right on these lines. And actually, what I had to do was get a feel for exactly where they should be, write down all those numbers, and then go ahead and put the guides in numerically. So I went ahead and made a list. What that did though, it gave me seamless precision um, with my placement for my artwork. So I showed you the PNGs, the quick export without having to crop out of Illustrator. Now what I'm ready to do, and I'm going to go down into this Your Artwork Here folder and place embedded, which is under File, Place Embedded, or Command F on a Mac. And I'm going to grab my flats for placement 2, make sure it's the one I want to work with. I'm going to hit place. This, I'm going to hold down Option so it scales from the center. And now I'm going to utilize my guides. My number 1, I know my orientation is actually this way. I'll turn this back on for a second. The A's are my front panel, and then I have my top right here, and then I have my back, and then I have my last panel over to the other side. So I know my orientation is this way. The one awkward thing, my bottom that's over here on the left, that actually lives here. So you kind of have to work through to get the sizing exact, but I know I have my area marked in here quite well. So I'm going to go up to my top bottom, full size. That's my correct size. And now with Snap to Guides enabled, and let me turn back on instead of the model, this edit is much more helpful. And I'm trying to get a snap into this guide so that I can grab my back panel. I'm going to delete that Your Art Here layer. It's going to select to my guide. So again, that precision. I'm going to cut, Command X. First, rasterize the whole thing. A smart object you're not going to be able to cut and paste out of. So I'm going to cut that back panel, and then I'm going to paste in place, which is Shift Command V. I'm going to go ahead and label this. This is my back. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to go back to my whole thing put together layer. And now I'm going to grab this side panel that I know goes here, and I'm just going to do one more of these so that you can see the move one more time. Make sure I'm snapping to my guides. I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to Shift Command V, paste in place. I'm going to go ahead and label. That's my bottom. Go back to my full original. I actually can leave things on, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to pull this back over. This is now my front right here. So I would cut that, and then that would leave me just this panel here, which then would slide right over. So what that looks like when I finish is this here. Before I save and go back to Dimension for placement, I want to make sure I turn off any extra layers artwork that I don't need. So that is saving, and we will go back to Dimension. I'm going to pull this down here. Um, Normally I would do a lot more naming in here. I'm not doing it now to try and keep things moving. We're already at 20 minutes. We probably have about 10 left. Luckily, uh, my YouTube channel has been up long enough that I'm grandfathered into the 15-minute limit for videos. So I just swapped in the file that was looking at for UV, and now we can see that is my model. Oddly enough, because of the way I built it, it's also doubling over, or you can see through the material, even though I do have material on this. Um, what I have in there is, oh, no, I don't have material in here. So what I like to use, the actual box is actually a high gloss. Um, and I like to do a slightly cool white that is very light. You're actually not going to see it because the graphic is solid, but I do like to put those colors in there. Occasionally I'm working with stuff that it isn't fully covered. This one is because of the way I built this artwork. This actually is a combination of ink stamping, transfer prints, and vector artwork. All right, so next move, and then we'll look at some of the final stuff really quick. My next move, I need to get this box inside of there. The align tools in Dimension, when you have multiple objects selected, you just hit A on the keyboard. And then what I'm going to do is center and center and center. And what you can see is now I have a solid box around a sleeve, and if I was using this for some sort of presentation, now I can kind of say, and here's how the sleeve, the sleeve functions just to make the case, and now you can see the stuff inside of there. All right, so what we need to do is take this back to here. I want to swap. Let's just take a look. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this one alone as is. I can actually show you another way to do this. So I have this set up as my environment as soon as this opens. When you have a ton of visual programs open holding a bunch of files like I do, I have a ton of stuff open in Illustrator, Photoshop, and now Dimension. It's testing the limits of my hardware a bit. So this is what I have set up from the other one. I really should have showed you this in Photoshop. So that's my render from the first one. Let me show you how easy this environment is. And PS, if you're not using camera bookmarks, you really should be. So I just have, I just have two giant planes set up here and some cubes to use as platforms. And then you can see once I'm in close enough, um, it's really kind of seamless as being an environment. Obviously, I have my lighting set. I'm not much on the full flood kind of lighting. I like things that are slightly moodier. Since I have this set up, the easiest way to handle this for me really is to just go ahead and swap the UV into the other one. I'm going to utilize the same views. It'll give me the exact same stuff as far as um, presentation, which really is fine for me. So I'm just going to keep swapping. And of course, because I'm doing this for a demo, they didn't swap the way that I expected them to. All right, and that is very strange, and I'm absolutely not going to fight it. It's because of the way I have these positioned. What I really should be doing, let me go ahead and do this so you can see it. So you can import a dimension file into a dimension file. Since unlike a lot of the other apps, you can't have multiple files open at the same time in Dimension. So what you end up doing is saving your models as singles. Get this 90, get this up to the ground. Kind of the way I roll with this. I just want to show you all one placement. So right now this model is flat to the ground. The way that, and then for me, I would copy first because I'm going to need 3 copies total. So Alt Option drag will duplicate. That's fairly easy once my computer's done thinking about it. And then what I'm going to do, I like tilting these, and you have to be really careful kind of about where you tilt from because it gives you that weird wonk when you tilt like that. So really, and I'm not 100% sure where that axis is that it's actually tilting from. I can be a little spatially challenged at times, actually. So again, I don't really think I'm going to fight that, but what I would like to show you all, if I had a hold of both of these properly, and that's not going to happen either. Little rusty with the demos. So I have an inner box. Which one's the inner box that goes with that? All right, that's this one. So now if I shift and I actually have the right stuff, and I can spin this around so that you can see it a little. It's actually going to be somewhere in there. The messing around with all of that. The trick I've found to be able to get these things directly on top of those bottoms is to have the cube just under where you can see it. And suddenly I'm having a million issues in here, of course. Where you can see it and then bring up the whole thing together is what I was getting at. All right. So I have my view set actually, and I already rendered the original other file, which I'm not going to reopen. However, I would like to show you one thing in here. So when I render, I'm going to have a camera bookmark that I'm going to do. I'm not going to render the current view. I always do high slow again because I'm thinking at some point I might want this for print. And I know it's very common that a lot of people render out PNGs because that's the view, and if you really have to do a little soft adjustment in Photoshop, you can very, very easily. However, if you render out a PSD and it's an object with no background, um, or even what I'm going to show you, the way this PNG's out, there are a lot of additional very helpful tools in the PSD file that you may want. So I'm not going to render this. I'm going to get this put together for work presentation wise, and go back to that and render it later. What I want to show you again, this is the one I did earlier. The lighting is actually pretty good. A lot of times what I will do, so down here at the bottom, um, if I had an object with no background, if I just turn off this background color, whatever objects are in there will be suddenly isolated on a transparent background, which can be very handy for a lot of reasons. A lot of times, one quick adjustment I will do is just turn the actual rendered image layer on and put that on soft light the way I have the lighting in this one. That's not really a good move. A little darker color might not hurt. That kind of bumps the contrast of the graphics a little. But honestly, uh, I have enough practice rendering this stuff that I really don't have to do a lot of lighting adjust in Photoshop. Occasionally, it really depends on the colors too. There isn't a lot of color to this. The last thing I wanted to share with you all, because that's the process. It's pretty straightforward. It goes very fast. Once you do it a couple times, especially the working with the UV map part, you'll find it pretty easy to handle. And again, if you're working with something that is a cylinder, more like a tube, the graphic placement is so much easier, so much easier. Um, but notice we have object selection masks, which are really helpful. These, if you have your magic wand set correctly, will give you a fairly accurate sort of selection. So really quickly, if I just wanted to get all the boxes selected, turn that off, come back into here, and then maybe what I want to do is sort of colorize antique this a little bit, or a ton, depending. Then I can slide this because this is kind of an antique sort of concept. I can actually like sepia tone these a little bit based on how light dark. So maybe I want that little bit of a parchment sort of look to these. That would do it. And it's you can isolate things just that quickly. And again, if I didn't have an environment in here, when I turned off the background color, the actual rendered objects themselves would be isolated. All right, that that actually is how it works. I really hope that you all found that helpful. Enjoy and check back. I might have a few more new things in the pipe. All right, enjoy.